So the debate, right? The inside strategy debate. Um, it's been tried many times. That's the thing that's always baffled me about it. Is that it seems like every iteration of the inside strategy thinks it's discovered something that we haven't tried before. We're in
That's why I was very clear on this slide here that we talked about the failures of trying to reform, primaries and all this stuff. And so the next idea everyone has is, well, let's try to change the Democratic Party. And that's what the inside strategy essentially is.
Take it away.
And there's a couple of different approaches here. There's an inside-outside fusion strategy where it's like, well, I'm kind of independent, but I kind of work with the Democrats when I need to as a fusion. And the other approach is the party within a party approach, that you try to behave as like a caucus within the Democratic Party that pushes for change. And you could see from the slides here under both of them that like since the late 1800s, both of these approaches have been tried over and over and over and over again. None of these ideas are new ideas. DSA didn't just suddenly discover, hey, we can be a caucus within the Democratic Party. This has been tried over and over and over again with the same results every time that it's been done.
They've tried it over and over.
DSA itself has been around since the 60s, more or less. I mean, it's a little complicated history, but that's what's listed here. The People's Party of 1896, the American Labor Party of the 1930s through the 50s, the Liberal Party of New York, that's from the end of World War II till today, the Vermont Progressive Party, the Working Families Party. We see the party within a party approach going back to McGovern's campaign, but DSA, the Rainbow Coalition, Democracy for America, all the way up to Bernie Sanders' Our Revolution. Where is it? It didn't create an independent political structure. It just folded into the Democrats. And so we see this same track happen every single time a new candidate or a new organization tries it. It always gets co-opted and folded into the Democratic Party and folded into the needs of capital instead of being able to maintain its independence and actually push for true socialist systemic change. So the verdict here is that they get co-opted into the Democratic Party, and most reformists end up becoming careerists. They end up becoming the people that work within the Democratic Party. You can look at the list of names here. Howard Dean, Kucinich. Woo, that's right. Kucinich, Obama, Sanders, every single one of them was considered to be this outside reformer when they started. And then after their campaign, they became, insider, DSA, insider Democratic Party super delegates, with their special place within the party, and they became people that would bring those progressive movements into the party as opposed to trying to push them into more of an independent space. So, this is not new, and it's not even like, well, we tried it once and maybe we could do it a little bit better, right? It's like over 100 years at this point of trying it over and over and over again and showing the failures. So, most of the reformists end up as careerists within the party. Most of these organizations get folded into the party, and these organizing efforts, part of the reason they fail is because they always start off not as independent, working class organizations and parties, but they're always formed as these top-down nonprofit sort of organizations that focus on mobilizing for the Democratic Party instead of helping communities organize for their own self-determination. And they're, as nonprofits, they just collect profits and they start to pool donors, right? They end up with that same problem of being donor-funded organizations as opposed to membership organizations. And so they end up with exactly the same problems that the Democratic Party itself has, which is partly why they're so easily co-optable. So I think this long time record of these different strategies, again, points us toward the importance of maintaining independence, which we'll talk more about as I go. But let me throw it to Chris for comments.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I say when we talk about this quite a bit is The Democrats: A Critical History by Lance Selfa. It's on Haymarket Press. He actually owes us a new one, an updated version. But it goes into detail onto a lot of this. It goes into detail about, as it says, a critical history, right? of looking at the history of the Democratic Party and the history of attempts to reform it. And anytime I hear Kucinich, one of the first horror stories that I heard when I became active in the National Green Party was another young Green at the time told me a story, and that is that Kucinich came to their state party during the primary when he was running and said, "I want to do a list swap. I want you to give me your membership lists, and I will use them to try to move the discussion in the Democratic Party to the left." I don't think anyone was delusional enough to think that Kucinich was going to win. So really the only thing on the table could have been moving the conversation. And then the agreement was after the primary, Kucinich would turn over his lists to the Green Party. That deal was made. Kucinich was given the lists. Greens were lobbied by Kucinich, by his Democratic primary campaign. His campaign ended. That list then went to the Democratic Party, and the Green Party got nothing. Right? And to be clear, this is I don't know what the state of the Democrats' legal maneuvering in terms of their primary at the time. But like when Bernie Sanders ran in 2016 and 2020, he signed contracts saying every single person in my contact list goes to the DNC, right? That is a condition of running in the primary, was that you share your lists with the DNC afterwards. So I remember in 2016, all these Bernie supporters up in arms about why are they getting Clinton emails? Well, Bernie sold you out. It was part of the agreement, and he sold you out before he even announced he ran, right? He sold you out when he signed that first round of paperwork, and he did the same thing, right? And it should have been clear. The trap should have been clear to that state party, but it wasn't, and they took the deal and got screwed over. And it really, like I said, it shouldn't surprise anyone, but that's what happens when we try to insert ourselves into this. And I often hear a question of, well, if Greens don't have a candidate, shouldn't we endorse someone, right? Or shouldn't we put our view out there, because otherwise we don't have a voice, which in a way can be true. But the problem with that is when you do that, right? When you don't have a candidate running in your local city council race, so you endorse a de facto Democrat instead, because most of the time city council, at least here in Illinois, is nonpartisan, right? So they're not a Democrat, or they're no one's anything, but we all know. When you do that, you use your voice solely to build up another party. Right? You use that, you take all of your energies that should be put into building an independent political alternative, and you take all those energies and all that focus and what little cred and attention you have, and you put it into building the Democratic Party instead of yourself. So there are definitely ways that Greens that don't have a candidate in the race can engage, especially on advocating for issues and making sure that the eco-socialist perspectives are part of the discussion in ways, but very rarely is throwing their voice behind a Democrat something that pays off in the long term. Even in times I can think of when I know of Green locals who have supported Democrats, when they're elected, their voice doesn't carry any weight. Right, just like the rest of the grassroots of the Democratic Party doesn't carry any weight with their electives. The Greens also, right? Once they throw their weight in behind a Democrat, when they're elected, they don't get a seat at the table. We're still outside.